Lowe's knows how to turn big plans into real results. Whether it's new appliances or a home refresh, get started with 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more with a My Lowe's Rewards credit card, January 15th through the 30th. So you can invest in your upgrade now and pay over time. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payment required. See store or Lowe's.com for details.
Hey there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shirin.
And this is technically going to be our last episode of this month. So sorry. I'm traveling at the end
Of January, yes.
Yeah, of January.
Yeah, you're going to Mexico while I stay in this frozen wasteland.
To be fair, the weather's been absolute garbage.
It's been atrocious.
Yeah, for a while.
We've had so much snow and ice.
Yeah.
So early this year that it feels like it's like end of February at this point.
It's crazy how early it kicked in and how much it stayed.
Oh, God.
You know, you get some, it all melts in November, and then it doesn't come back until Christmas or afterwards. Not this year.
Oh, no, this year it has been horrible.
As of mid-November.
Mid-November, like the 14th of November, we've just had dump after dump after dump of snow and ice.
It's not been great. So anyway, sorry. So I will also, this is a 5-episode month, which is sometimes a little bit tricky with schedules and stuff like that for us. So listen, for this particular month, we're going to be...
You're getting 4.
You're getting 4. I'm sorry. But what we are doing... is having what feels like a timely conversation, because there are, in the next number of weeks, there are a number of new adaptations of period pieces that are dropping. So in the last week of the month, on January 29th, the new season of Bridgerton kicks off. So part 1 of that will be dropping on Netflix on January 29th. And then on February 13th, we are finally getting Emerald Fennell's take on Wuthering Heights. And I have to just call it that because it doesn't really feel like too much of an adaptation, which is part of the conversation I think that we're going to have today.
Definitely.
So with all of those kind of on our mind, you know, we talked about Frankenstein towards the end of last year as well and everything. I think that it felt like a timely kind of topic of conversation to talk about adaptations of period pieces, whether they are classics and were published eons ago, or whether they are just, you know, period pieces that have been written in more modern times but are set at a particular time in history. And what we're seeing more frequently now really has to do with like these adaptations taking the classic sort of style and kind of flipping it into something maybe more fantastical to a degree. You know, is
more of an interpretation than an adaptation.
And is it like, does that have to do with the audience? Does that have to do with the filmmakers themselves? And, you know, some of the discourse that's been created maybe over this to a degree as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, before we get started on that, Shirin, what is on your nightstand right now?
I am currently reading an ARC that I requested. So thank you to the publisher of Murder Bimbo by Rebecca Novak. This is coming out.
That you just kicked it off with this.
So good. So this is the actual release date is February 10th.
Yeah.
So we'll have a review up on our website in the next couple of weeks ahead of time before it gets published. Full disclosure, I asked for this book based on the title.
Oh,
I know you're not supposed to, you know, judge a book by its cover or title.
Oh, we all do. Come on.
But there was actually a little foreword by the editor in this book about how they got this on their desk and they were thinking about Night Bitch and what was it, Serial Killer Sisters or something.
My Sister the Serial Killer.
My Sister the Serial Killer.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh man, there's like a trifecta here. Like now we've got Murder Bimbo in the mix. I am loving this book. It is a short, snappy story about an escort, a sex worker, who gets recruited to kill a prominent political figure in the United States. It's a fictional character, fictional political figure that has a lot of traits and characteristics of some other political figures that we've seen recently.
I mean, I think it feels like, it's timely
Yes.
in terms of the current political landscape, particularly in the U.S., obviously.
Yes, and I'm going to write this in my review, but this reads a lot like a brain dump of like an opinion of what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And so it's really well written, really enjoying it. Can't wait to see how it ends. But yeah, so that's what I'm reading. What about you, Megan?
Yeah, I feel like it's not even worth giving too much away.
No, I don't want to.
No.
No.
I've also actually just at the time that we're recording this, I just 2 days ago finished an ARC. By a very prominent Norwegian author that I think people over here call Jo Nesbø. But according to the pronunciation that we looked at, it's actually U Nesbø.
Yeah.
So for anybody unfamiliar, if you basically he's like basically like the godfather of like Nordic noir stories. Very hard detective fiction, but set in Scandinavia. He's Norwegian and set in Scandinavia. Everything, it's always very cold.
I wonder why.
It's always very difficult to deal with. He famously has a detective in a series of novels that he's written. He has a lot of standalones, but his Harry Hole series is very popular. It has had a film adaptation previously with Michael Fassbender, The Snowman, number of years ago.
Many people would know that one.
Yes,
yeah.
and is actually, my understanding is that there's currently a Harry Hole TV show in development.
Oh,
I cannot
really?
remember for the life of me with which service or whatever, but that's actually something that's in development that I think we might be getting this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice. And I'm pretty sure I read this somewhere that I think over in the UK, like the BBC has done a few adaptations of his work.
Okay, yeah.
I think he's quite popular over in Europe.
Yeah.
I don't think we get quite as much of him over here, which is surprising because, we live in an Arctic wasteland.
I know you'd think, that it would be pretty popular.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yes. So U Nesbø has a new book that's being published on, I want to say February 3rd, called Wolf Hour. This one is actually maybe a little bit different to a degree than some of his previous. It is a standalone, from what I understand, and it is a split timeline, split perspective novel that follows an initial incident, a series of murders, shootings that took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2016. And it's juxtaposed along with a character who's a writer in 2022 who's visiting Minneapolis in order to gather more details about what actually happened. So we have a split perspective from the writer's narration, from the narration of the detective in 2016 who was following this person and trying to solve the string of crimes that was taking place in these shootings that were occurring in Minneapolis. You get a perspective of a few of the different detective characters, of the shooter themselves and their part in all of this. So there are a lot of little components. I found that this one has done a really good job of keeping the suspense.
Nice.
To a degree that there were maybe certain aspects that I kind of could have guessed to an extent, but the writing was really well done. The buildup was so good that I kind of just found myself going along with it.
Yeah, not trying to figure out what was happening.
Just kind of trying to
I
enjoy
love those kinds of thrillers. Yeah.
To just enjoy it and see where I wound up. I quite enjoyed it. I honestly thought it was really good. So that one too, I'm hoping that's in the next week or so. We'll have a review up over at fullybooked.ca as well. So we've just been rife with I think some really great ARCs to kick off.
Like this that you just mentioned, Wolf Hour.
Wolf Hour,
yeah. It sounds like it would make a great movie adaptation.
Oh, it would.
Yeah.
It would. It would be very, very good to do. A limited series, I think, for this would be very good because you can cover enough of the detail of the landscape, both, in 2016, so right before Trump's first election, followed by 2022, post-COVID, post-George Floyd in Minneapolis. And there's commentary with regards to all of that in the novel as well. So there's a lot of different kind of layers to things that were interesting to touch on. So
could almost make another one with 2025,
oh, you definitely
2026, and anyway.
You could.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so it's been interesting to see that. So,
cool.
Yeah, and it feels, I don't know, maybe it feels extra poignant right now because of everything that's going on in Minnesota.
I can imagine.
At the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's why it kind of hits harder because of, unfortunately, everything that's gone on in recent weeks. So.
But shout out to all of our publisher friends who send us ARCs. We really love them. We love having them and keep sending them.
Thank you so much. It's so fantastic to be able to like kind of dig into these stories prior to publication and be able to like decide our own feelings about them sometimes before maybe
the social media kicks in about it.
Before things get hyped, sometimes overhyped in a way and things like that where I can just form my own opinion about something prior to publication. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
It also, for me, from my standpoint, I feel so validated in having an English degree and having like publishers sending me advanced reading copies of things. I'm like, guys, I did it. I did something with my English degree.
I did something with my degree. You don't understand. Nobody ever thought I was going to.
I didn't think I was going to.
No, fair.
Anyway.
Okay, hopping over, let's talk about the English degree more. Hopping over to the period piece adaptations. I guess this came up when we were spitballing ideas because we were like, oh, hey, we're definitely going to be talking about Bridgerton because there's a batch of episodes. I think the first 4 episodes drop on January 29th. So we're going to be chatting about those. So like I said, that's it. Sort of that week, we won't have a new episode coming out. We'll have one the following week. We'll hop back on with that. And hopefully at that point, too, everyone will have had an opportunity to watch those first 4 episodes anyway. So it's good. It'll give you a little reprieve for all of us to be able to catch up to the same place, basically, in the show as well. So, with that in mind, we were thinking about that. We were obviously talking about Wuthering Heights because it's going to be an absolutely massive, I get the feeling, release when it comes
especially
out.
With Margot Robbie, Jacob Elordi,
and Emerald Fennell.
Such a good Heathcliff. I can't wait.
This is gonna be a really interesting one, I get the feeling, and it's already caused a lot of discourse online, which I think we were also talking about a little bit, and so I think with that in mind too, it's gonna be really interesting to see what the actual final reception of the film is. Right? So in talking about that, I think that's something that we've seen in recent years, more often than not, the types of period adaptations that we're getting have this tendency to lean a little bit more onto the like almost fantasy side of things, right? I think Bridgerton's a great example of this.
Yeah, and what I will say about Bridgerton, like the first time I watched Bridgerton, I went into it blind. Yeah. So I had no idea.
I think most of us did.
I remember the day I watched Bridgerton, it was like the greatest day ever. So like let me walk you through my psyche. Let me set the scene. So it was like January 5th or something. Like the Christmas holidays had just ended. I had an extra day off work because of the Quebec holiday, and it was like a Monday. And then me and Ozzy, my dog, we were like snowed in because there'd been a huge snowstorm. And we just sat there eating cheeseburgers, watching Bridgerton. It was literally, I dream of this day.
You were like, this is like the best day.
It was the best day ever.
Memory.
We had 5 guys, and my dog and I sat there eating cheeseburgers. Nice. It was wonderful. Nice. All that to say, when I first watched Bridgerton, as someone who does have an English degree and whose mother is like the most British person on the entire planet.
I'm sure some people from the UK would argue with you about that, but sure.
I don't know, man. Like, the line, like, we're British, we only show affection to dogs and horses. It's this woman. Okay. Anyway, so British that, like, my whole life it's been like, oh, there's a World War II drama. We must watch it. Oh, there's a period piece about Victorian England. We must watch it. Like everything was always... So when I watched Bridgerton for the first time, I sat there with my mouth open like, oh my God, we can actually invent shit? Yeah. Like, we can just come up with whatever, like, fantasy, Regency period. Like, okay, let's argue that it was accurate for that standpoint. I don't think it was.
I don't think it is. No,
it isn't at all. But the costumes and the set, the music, the characters, like you're just watching it and you just want to climb into your TV screen and just like cozy up to like a big frou-frou ball gown or something.
Well, this show has taken Regency and made it appealing to the masses.
Which it never was.
No.
Talk to me about any other Regency period piece.
Regency period pieces were for the lit girlies up until Bridgerton came out.
Right.
Like, let's be real. Most of it was for people who had studied this type of literature and were very invested and interested in it. It wasn't for your average...
Not many of us.
Which is not everybody, that's it. And so it wasn't for the average sort of consumer of you know, like a period drama. Like everybody kind of just watched Pride and Prejudice at some point, and that was it. That's all they'd done.
You know, you say Regency, you think of Jane Austen,
Yes.
or you think of like Jane Eyre, or you think of like something along, and I might be being like crossing over on my timelines here, so don't come at me. But what I'm saying is, when you think Jane Austen, you think Charlotte Bronte, you think
Emily Bronte,
you think, you know, this is kind of where the train of thought goes, and then I start going into like George Eliot and stuff, and like it was just a very like dark and heavy time where you were either rich or you were poor, and if you were a woman, you were a commodity to be traded, and if you were a beautiful woman, then you were worth more money, and that was all there was to it. And so that's why like stories like Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, like they stick with us, you know, Wuthering Heights, because it was a story where the woman almost had a choice for herself, where she actually got to fall in love, but most of the time she didn't actually get a choice, as we see in Wuthering Heights. And so to see Bridgerton, where it's all this like, you know,
all choices. It's
all choices. That's what it's all about. And it's like, you know, it's taken the Regency period and like elevated it to a space where we actually want more of it.
Well, particularly for a modern audience,
correct?
Obviously, right? Because, you know, as a rule, oftentimes now, particularly on this side of the world, I guess, you know, women have more agency to obviously choose their relationships and things, and so they don't want to really watch that much about women who are just in arranged marriages, marry their partner, and then I suppose maybe grow some level of affection for them over time. But it's like maybe a quiet contentment and not much more. They want, you know, we want to watch the romance. We want to watch like the sweeping moments, the beautiful interactions between the characters where they do genuinely fall in love with one another. We want people to have love matches. That's something that they refer to on the show all the time, right? Like that's the type of thing that we want to see.
And I don't know about you, Megan, but like now, since we've had like adaptations like Bridgerton's not an adaptation, okay, whatever, however you want to classify it, but like we've had, you know, media put out like Bridgerton, and, you know, to your point, we're seeing what's going on, what's coming out with Wuthering Heights. And the liberties being taken there. I don't know about you, but now when I see that they're producing an adaptation, again, I'm using Jane Eyre because for some reason it's the only one that's sticking in my head right now. When I see them come out with something like that and it's more of an accurate adaptation, I'm almost disappointed because I'm like, they've done it so many times.
And that I can understand, because that's something that we've seen over and over and over again. And if you want a closer, I could say anyway, historically accurate adaptation, there are 7 of them on the BBC. Like you can find older versions of them, black and white versions all the way through to maybe 90s, 2000s versions of these that are closer to a more historically accurate adaptation and interpretation of these stories that exist already. So I guess there's a large part of me that can understand at this point, you know, some people get very upset about it. And look, if you prefer the historically accurate ones, that's totally fine and totally understandable. And if it's what your preference is, that's fine. But I can also see the flip side of it, that filmmakers more and more frequently now are noticing the trend of being able to gather a larger audience by taking those liberties, by modernizing certain aspects of these stories, whether it is through the costumes, through the musical choices, through the level of types of female characters. The dialogue. Yes, the dialogue. You were like flipping back and forth there. Yes, the dialogue. You know, but through the level of, that's it, agency that the female characters have in these stories, which, you know, isn't really a thing, or wasn't a thing at the time.
And it's funny because, like, if you think back, actually our first ever podcast episode
we were talking about classics.
Yes, was about Romeo plus Juliet, right? The Baz Luhrmann adaptation of it.
It was like our first or our second episode or something. It was
exactly. What's funny is that when that movie came out, that movie was batshit crazy. Like, people were like, what are you doing?
And it was completely modern.
It was completely modern, aside from the script, which is still hilarious to me that was the choice that he made. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
And then we got a few more of those.
And then we got a few more of them, right?
We got a Hamlet adaptation that with Mel Gibson. We got like a few of those.
We got an Othello as well, I think.
I think you might be right. I don't remember if we got but I don't think that one had the dialogue.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't think they had the iambic pentameter of it all.
Fair enough. But like at the time, like in the 90s when that came out, it was a huge deal.
Massive.
Whereas now there's like a shift, right? And it seems like we're getting more of them than the actual like accurate adaptations.
Correct.
And I'm using air quotes here.
I guess I would argue that I just wanted to kick it off with Bridgerton because I would argue that Bridgerton maybe set the tone for a lot more of what we're seeing now. Whether other filmmakers are aware of that or not, there could have been some inspiration there, and studios are definitely seeing it, and that's probably to a degree what they're pushing for now as well.
Yeah.
So that can kind of bring us into what we're seeing upcoming for an adaptation like Wuthering Heights. Another one, yet again, an adaptation that has been done multiple times over the years, more classically adapted, differently adapted. But if you're talking about something where you want a story that is like closer to the novel, it exists already. Is it page for page? Probably not. But these things already exist. They have already happened. So I find it interesting that we're getting like a bunch of people like screaming online about this. So I'm like, I mean, you've already got some. I know that there are aspects that are always different. No, I cannot remember any adaptation that I've ever come across of Wuthering Heights in any capacity in which Heathcliff isn't white. I get that.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Because
fair.
technically it's not, the way he's written is technically as a person of color. And so we still haven't changed that. I know.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, I wonder to a degree, and I don't think I have an opinion about this because I could vacillate so much about it. Some of the conversation around this has been, one, this is annoying because this character is not written as white and yet is always played by a white man, and that is frustrating and annoying, and for visibility.
Yeah, we could have done better for this one.
Definitely.
I do love Jacob Elordi, but we could have done better.
Much better.
I agree. Yeah.
However, at the same time, there's the other part of me that can see the other side of the argument that I have come across from people, which is that potentially some filmmakers do not want to make that choice because they don't want to perpetuate the idea of violence for men of color.
Yeah, like
because his character's very aggressive and very violent.
He is but Kathy and Heathcliff are horrible people.
They're toxic.
They are toxic. They are awful people, both of them.
Yeah.
All they do is destroy everybody around them.
Yeah.
Because what they want to do ultimately is destroy each other. They have this weird love affair.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's such an interesting argument that you're bringing up here because like I'm not on social media, so I don't see these things. And that's really interesting, you know. And it makes you wonder, or was that the intention of the author originally?
Maybe
to suggest
because
that
at the time the racism.
Oh,
I mean, it's still there, but like
rampant,
at the time it would have been quite rampant. So
and
I wonder
overt,
if that was like a purposeful choice. Did she purposefully write this character as not white and describe him not that way? It's ambiguous in the novel. Like they don't give you an exact ethnicity, obviously.
No.
However, he is described as not a white man.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like then you start looking at pieces like Othello, and Othello is a man of color.
Yep.
And the biggest issue that Othello has is, the like stereotypes that are imposed on him and the expectations that people do have of him being a violent man because of who he is.
Yes.
And there's many, many lines about this in the play. And so, when you look at Wuthering Heights, like, is that what the author was suggesting?
Maybe.
I don't know. But if you take that element out of it, which I don't want to negate the importance of analyzing,
obviously.
Analyzing, either what the author meant, what the historical context was at the time, did that have an impact on his behavior, on his character? Ultimately, Kathy loved him for who he was, but she was an awful person. So what does that say,
Oh, they're both terrible.
They're both awful.
Yeah, they're both terrible. I know there has been also, one thing I did want to bring up before I forget about it, is that there has been some discussion and some theorizing to a degree about, because Emerald Fennell obviously has explained to an extent, right, that if you look at the posters and everything, of course you'll notice that there are quotations around the title because this, to a point that we've made previously about like the Frankenstein adaptation and things like that, these are interpretations of people's thoughts about this story and how they would like to put it out on screen. And she has essentially indicated that's what she's doing. This is her interpretation and the interpretation that she's chosen to put forward. I saw an interview snippet not too long ago where that was essentially what she had said. And some theorizing that has been done because of this and because of things like, you know, what we've seen released in terms of like the costuming for the film and like how
which are kind of like all over the place,
and fantastical it looks and things like that, and like all those like very interesting choices that have been made. The music being done by Charlie XCX, like, you know, like those things, those very modern kinds of like aspects of it. What people are wondering is if Margot Robbie's character, if this version will be kind of like, to a degree, it's like Margot Robbie is reading Wuthering Heights and she's inserting herself into the role of Kathy in the book, and that's what we're seeing on screen is like what she's interpreting or doing, which could, like, you know, explain some of the casting. Like, she's quite a bit older obviously than Kathy's described at the beginning of the novel and stuff. This adaptation looks horny as fuck, like, you know, like those, and like types also of things. The costumes
are all over the place in terms of like there's no specific time period that's being represented in this. Like, I saw one image where she's got like a big flashy, almost like Barbie,
it looks like
dress.
A plastic dress.
Yeah. And then there's like a bunch where it's like, you know, something you would typically associate with Wuthering Heights.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting, and if that's the case, I'm along for the ride.
I would kind of find that an interesting interpretation if it's almost like, you know, it's like Margot Robbie is like, as whoever she is reading the book and feels that she has like become Catherine and is in the story, and this is her feeling like this is happening to her, like you taking a step into your own, into like a novel that you're reading or something, and into the world it exists in. That's so interesting. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it's not, then someone should make some sort of interpretation that way. It could be interesting, and I feel like that's like another one that sort of maybe posits that's it. Are we looking for more kind of fantastical adaptations like this? Is that something that audiences are looking for? Well, that's something I was about to ask you. Like, as we move forward, what are your thoughts about adaptations turning into more of an interpretation? Now, I'm not saying, like, personally, for example, if it were like a first time that we're adapting something, I don't want an interpretation. I want an adaptation. That's fair. You know, but if it's something that's like classic literature that we've seen a number of times on our screens, like, what do you think about this? Personally, and again, that's it. Look, I'm not hyper focused on classics as a rule. I enjoy some of the ones I've read. I haven't enjoyed others, sort of depending on what my feelings are about them. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I can sit down and watch a full-fledged adaptation and enjoy it in the same way that I can watch something like maybe this Wuthering Heights adaptation or like Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and enjoy it just as much because I'm okay with, and I guess understanding of, filmmakers interpreting work in a particular way, especially in a modern setting, and just like, to a degree, I think we need to also acknowledge and admit that studios and filmmakers are trying to gather an audience. They're trying to make money. That's what the purpose of this also is, and filmmaking for the studios at the end of the day. They're not necessarily just going to sit around funding projects and being like, okay, this needs to be a page for page, completely historically accurate, adaptation of this work. Because they know that they're cutting out maybe 60% of their audience by doing so. So, you know, I think we need to kind of be cognizant of that to a degree. If you're not a big fan of it, that's fine. That's understandable. If it's something that you'd rather not see, it is. But you have free will in order to not watch these things in the first place. Yes, but we like to yell about it online. We do. And, you know, the other thing I'll say is that in the spirit of looking at adaptations and, you know, even older classic literature, I think it's disappointing that we continue to get adaptations of things that we've seen already. And it would have been nice to see some classics that we have never seen on our screens before. That's true. You know, I feel like there's a lot of like Tom Hardy that we haven't seen. There are definitely a few authors whose works have rarely. George Eliot rarely makes the screen. Rarely, if ever, been touched, I guess. I'm thinking of the other one. Anyway, but there have been. But it's true. There have been multiple. I just find like we've seen it over and over again in the past like little while. Things like, gosh, what was that Haley Steinfeld's show that was on for a few years there, Dickinson, which was about Emily Dickinson's younger life. That was one that, again, put more of like a modern spin on things to an extent. You know, like a lot of like those types of adaptations.
Henry James, that's who I was thinking of.
Henry James. Yeah. Okay, yeah. You know, so we are seeing a lot more of these now, and I think it kind of speaks to maybe where we're at landscape-wise in terms of what audiences are looking for and what they're interested in. And so, you know, maybe it's not your cup of tea, and that's fine. But I personally, I don't really have too much of an issue with it, if I'm honest. Do you?
No, I don't. Especially the ones that have been like done and redone,
exactly.
you know? And even then, like if they were to come out with an adaptation of a classic that we've never seen on our screens before, I don't think I would be fussed if they decided to do a much more modern take on it. Because I think a lot of the time now with the, you know, appetite of what people are wanting to see on their screens, it just doesn't make sense anymore to do things like historically accurate.
No, I'm sorry.
You know, where like women and people of color are being treated like garbage, you know,
like,
or like I don't want to watch that. Like let's just put that aside and let's just move on with our lives. Not to say that like we're negating the fact that it happened. What I'm saying is that we don't want to continuously be like
continue to see it. We're just gonna continue the status quo and see exactly to your point, all white adaptations of everything forever on our screens. It's fucking boring. It's exclusionary. It's prejudicial.
I would rather
it's of its time. So if that's the case and it's time to just get rid of that entirely, okay.
If we're going to adapt it, let's adapt it to our current situation in some ways, you know.
Exactly, so that people actually feel that they're being represented for a change.
Especially if it has nothing to do with the story itself.
Oh my God, seriously.
You know
if it doesn't change anything, what the fuck do you care?
Exactly.
What does it matter?
What does it matter? Looking at you people about the Little Mermaid, like leave it alone.
The Little Mermaid, Rings of Power.
Oh, just leave it alone. You can all move on.
You have a serious problem if you have that much of an issue with it. Even something as straightforward as that, don't get me wrong, garbage adaptation of the Dark Tower film that came out a number of years ago when they cast Idris Elba as that character. There were a bunch of people who were mad that he was black. And I'm like, what does it matter? And
it doesn't matter. It has no impact to the story.
No, and I remember at the time I was like, why the hell do we care about this? And I talked to Arthur about it because he loves the Dark Tower series. He's a huge fan of it. He devoured those books when he was younger and he adores them. And he literally said, he was like, I mean, like, yeah, sure, he's described as white in the books, but he was like, it doesn't really make a difference to the character. It doesn't change anything in any capacity. So what does it matter?
It's like the same rule of thumb that I always use with like the boomers in my life when like they're telling me a story and they feel the need to like specify the person's race or like sexual orientation or something. And I'm like, hi, did that contribute to the story at all? Like, was that necessary for the story?
You need to give yourself, like, this happens to me sometimes, where, like, that's it, you listen to the story. I've talked about other friends with this as well. You listen to the story, you get to the end, and you're kind of like, I was waiting to see if you mentioning that at the beginning made any difference.
None.
In the story whatsoever.
And I feel like that rule of thumb should be applied to adaptations and everything, basically. It's like, does this have any bearing on the story at all? No. Move on.
9 times out of 10 the answer is no. And you're like, okay, that sounds about right. So anyway, listen, I'm looking forward to Bridgerton, and we'll definitely be back to talk about that in a couple of weeks. Like book-wise, I find a lot of them, I've read a number of the books and they kind of blend together to a degree in my head, but Luke Thompson as Benedict is like my absolute favorite sibling. I think he's adorable.
So you're like buzzing for this,
I'm definitely looking forward to his season just because I think it's time for him to be able to like have his moment in the spotlight. I think he's so cute and so funny and genuine as a character, and so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just fascinated, I think, with the idea of what this Wuthering Heights adaptation is going to do. I think it's going to be visually probably stunning.
Yeah.
I don't care as much about the historical adaptation of it. I'm just curious to see if I actually enjoy it or not. Emerald Fennell's stuff is fascinating, but I will say some of it's a little bit surface level. She also has done Saltburn.
Okay, so she likes Jacob Elordi.
What she's famously known for, and prior to that, Promising Young Woman.
Okay, I like both of those. I was a big fan of both
I
of
have mixed
those.
feelings about both of those. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how
We'll
I feel
see.
about this. I feel like it might fall into the same camp for me that way for different reasons. But
Yeah.
I'm curious to see. I think visually it'll be absolutely stunning. Performance-wise, it'll probably be good as well. So I'm curious to see kind of how all of this turns out and shakes out. And I'm really curious to see what the final consensus is from people about this film.
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully you can follow along as we do continue to, that's it, kind of nab these new adaptations that are dropping this year. I think we're going to get like a pretty stacked year that way, it seems, of some really big ones. So keep up with all of that. We'll have info and everything over on our socials at fullybookedca, so you can check us out on all social media platforms there. And of course, as mentioned at the beginning, feel free to check out our website at fullybooked.ca, where we have, you know, recommendations, reviews of upcoming books and everything dropping pretty regularly. So feel free to check out everything we have going on over there as well. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.